Hey guys, what's up? This is Tom. Welcome to my balcony. You hear the birds chirping, cars flying by. Probably one of the neighbors gonna give us a weird look from their own balconies. But whatever. It's the 21st of May, meaning that the second half of the new Amogh Symphony double album 4 is being released today. And so I really can't hold off from making this video any longer. I've been trying to do it for the past, 2 weeks or so. But as it turns out, one of the neighboring apartments here to my studio is being renovated. And that means that there's the sound of power drills, hammers and saws pretty much going on all day. And then obviously I have other things to do as well. So I just couldn't make it work so far. So today's the day. Let's do this track by track video where I'll take you through each of the songs from the double album. This is a lot. Just saying a few quick words on each song, on my role in the making of these songs, on my guitar and oud parts and so on and so forth. And hopefully, maybe some of you weren't even aware that the album is coming out and what 4 is, who Amogh Symphony is. So this video may convert, hopefully, one or two of you. So here goes. Alright, let's get started. Disc number 1, or side number 1, song number 1, which is his master's voice. Definitely one of my favorite pieces on the entire album, and one of the most important ones for me, so I'm really glad that it's opening the album. And about this song, I always say that it's a great moment for me guitar-wise. So I'm playing fretless guitar on it, and it's a piece that I'd say I couldn't have done 10 or 15 years ago. It's made in such a way that it's taken me 25 years of guitar playing, of musical development to get to a point where I can do what I do on this track. And people who come to the album expecting it to open with a total shred fest and lots of notes and crazy licks will probably be disappointed or don't get it at first. But this is really one of the defining pieces, at least on the album, or also in general for me, concerning my guitar style and what I do as a musician. So what it is on this track is it's an Indian classical piece sung by Vishal's mother, Kasturi. So she's singing these beautiful Indian classical vocal lines, and there's a very quirky arrangement being built around it, piano and sound effects and all sorts of good stuff. But the main thing from my side is that I'm doubling her vocals on almost the entire track on fretless guitar. And so I transcribe what she did, and I try to emulate and double all these little inflections and little idiosyncrasies and microtonal glitches, if you will, that she's doing in her singing on the instrument. And if you've been following my career and also this YouTube channel a while, you know that I do this thing quite often as a challenge to myself, emulating different vocalists, different styles, and just trying to build a more human vocal-like style on the fretless guitar and develop that even further. And so this track is one of the culminations of those efforts, and I think one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever got to be a part of till date. So I'm really proud of this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Track number 1 is his master's voice. Track number 2 on disc 1 is Lonely Walk Towards, etc., etc. I'm not gonna even attempt to pronounce some of the Indian words in the title, so forgive me for that. So Lonely Walk is actually the track that started this collaboration between Amogh Symphony and I. Man, the birds are so loud. I really hope you get to hear what I'm saying. Oh, okay. Anyway, Lonely Walk is the song that started this whole thing. And I remember about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, Vishal sent me this track that he was working on for the new Amogh Symphony album. And there was still somebody else in the band at that time, the drummer, Jim. And I got to hear the song, and he asked me to play a guest solo on it, which I did. And I thought it came out really good. I did this 3-part long, multi-part song within a song thing, which I really like to do, and it's perfect for this track. It's all fretless guitar. It starts out in movement 1 with a long improvised take on my fretless Telecaster, which is kind of trying to adapt the nondescript oriental vibes in the track as well. And then it goes into an E-bow thing, which I played obviously using the E-bow on my Soul Tool 7-string fretless for a different tone. And then it goes into a third part, which is just complete chaos, because Vishal had built this horn arrangement, really atonal, crazy horn orchestral thing at the end. So I tried to just let the whole guitar solo escalate into a total atonal, noisy madness. And you can hear a little bit of that in the finished product still, even though it gets blended into the orchestra. So that's my main contribution to the song. So either way, he asked me to play the guest solo, and I did. But the song itself didn't really hold my attention that much, and I thought that something about it was missing, something was off about the entire vibe and sound of it. And I didn't really think about it too much at that time, until he later sent me the song again, and he said, usually it's not even that crowded on the streets at this time of the day. Anyway, so he sent me the song again, and he said, well, he had parted ways with Jim, the drummer, and he did a new arrangement of the song, and he himself re-recorded the drums. And once I heard the same song with his drumming, which is just totally different from Jim's, not to take any away from Jim's contribution, but Vishal's drumming was way more loose and jazzy, and it had this breathing human quality to it, and that really elevated the song to the next level. And suddenly it clicked for me, and as a listener I was thinking at that moment, okay, there's really something here, there's a sound to it, a vibe to it that just feels right. And we talked about it a little bit more, and I contributed more guitars to the song, all fretless guitars, and that worked out really well. And he asked me if I want to join the band. So yeah, that's the origin song in a way. And there's, apart from the solo, there's lots more fretless guitar going on. There's also oud going on, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But that's the main thing about the song Lonely Walk. You'll read it on the Bandcamp page. Song number 3 is The Art of Shape-Shifting, which some of you may have heard because it's out on our YouTube page and Bandcamp page, and has been released as the first single, the first piece of music we released for the album. That's I'd say one of the 2 prog epics on the album. But not in a way that it sounds like Yes or Dream Theater or one of those classic prog bands. It's prog more in the sense that it has a lot of different parts, a lot of different movements, and really quirky, interesting things going on, and there's a lot of things to take in. It's not a 3-minute pop song with a verse, chorus scheme. I don't even know how loud this is on the recording, but you'll see how it goes. So the out of shape shifting is probably a good place to talk a bit about one of the main ideas on the album that we use throughout the entire double album, which is using the oud. And the oud is, I think, one of the freshest thing about this. I really love playing the oud, but I didn't really get into playing the oud so much before this album. And what we're doing on this song and on a lot of later moments is we're playing these, Vishal and I were playing these heavy riffs, super heavy stuff, really difficult to memorize, really difficult to play, lots of little details, so quite techy, if you will. But we're not playing them in the usual metal production way where we have one heavily distorted rhythm guitar on the left side, one heavily distorted rhythm guitar on the right side. What we're doing is Vishal is playing this barely distorted microtonal instrument. I don't even know how he's calling it. And I'm doubling that on oud a lot of times, not always. And so it's just by that fact alone, it has a really different quality, a really different sound, and you don't really have the baggage that comes with the metal thing. You know, when you can do all sorts of musical ideas and riffs, but once it's produced and recorded in this, you know, doubled rhythm guitar metal kind of way, the wide rhythm guitars and then the drums in the middle, it has a certain baggage coming with the genre, which I still love. It's not about getting away from metal altogether, it's just about searching for a new way of expressing, a new way of doing this that's fresh and unexpected, and I think we definitely achieved this on this album. I'm sure that some people will be weirded out by that and expect something else, but that's the way it goes. So you hear lots of that thing on the out of shape shifting. There's funky stuff, there's lots of fretless guitar, short solos, oud solos, there's also distorted rhythm guitar and heavy shit going on, but when it does come up, it's always fretless guitar from my end, so that's interesting. And the out of shape shifting, just like the title suggests, goes through all sorts of changes. It's really quirky and it doesn't stay in one place really for long, and it's the closest thing to a prog epic you'll get on this album. Really like it, and I hope you'll check it out. I'm gonna insert the link to the song itself on YouTube here, and that's song number 3. Song number 4 on the first half is called Everything Is Now in the Eye of the Sun. Probably one of the most surprising songs for those of you who followed Amogh Symphony before, because it's a vocal song. And for those of you who don't know, Amogh Symphony started out as an instrumental, prog metal, death metal, shred solo project by Vishal Singh many years ago. And so hearing this song, which touches on influences from Soundgarden, Chris Cornell, Nine Inch Nails, that sort of thing, but also having Indian tabla, an oud solo that I played, and fretless guitar, and all these different production tricks, and just generally being verse, chorus, concise type of thing, which will probably weird a few long-time fans out, but you know, that's just how it goes if you want to if you want to evolve and try new things. And it's definitely one of my favorite pieces of the album, and definitely one of the pieces where I'm the happiest with my contribution. And there's a super awesome music video for it, which I'm going to link below and at this point somewhere in the screen. And I really enjoyed how that came about and turned out. Definitely one of the best looking and slickest music videos I've ever been a part of. And speaking of my own parts, there's 2 main contributions here. being the solos, the oud solo and the fretless guitar solo, because Vishal had recorded all the rhythm guitar on this song. And the oud solo is the point where I, on this whole recording session, was thinking, okay, that's hitting the sweet spot. It just has the right amount of notes. There's hopefully good feel and just hits all the check boxes. It's not too long, it's not too short, it just does exactly what it's supposed to do. And it almost sounds like if I know what I'm doing on the oud. Because when I went into this recording session, I hadn't really explored the instrument oud a whole lot. I recorded a little bit of oud on the Obscura Akrasis album. So there's oud on Sermon of the Seven Sons and Melos, the vinyl bonus track. And that was the first time I played around with that. And then there's a little bit of oud after I got my own one. I borrowed one from a friend for the Obscura session. I got my own one, a cheap one, to try out for around the time I did the 9NYN album 1 or 2 years ago. So much traffic today. Anyway, I just dabbled in it. I tried using it on a couple of tunes, but I never really sat down and tried to work out my own approach to the instrument and really got deep into it. Until Vishal suggested, after I joined Amogh Symphony, to use the oud as one of the main features on the album and just play it a lot, as much as I can, which made me really self-conscious and anxious about it, because I'm not an oud player, I'm a guitar player, and I just dabble in oud occasionally. And I told him that I really don't have a good grasp on the history and of the instrument, because it's a beautiful ancient instrument. It has so much history, and there's the Turkish way of playing it, the Egyptian way of playing it, and so much things to learn and to explore. And he said, I still remember that well, he said, I don't want you to play oud like an oud player, I want you to play oud like a guitar player, just approach it from a fresh perspective. And that really put me at ease in doing my thing. And in the process of recording this album, I think I got so much more invested in the oud and my oud playing. I took a couple of lessons with a local oud player, Wasim, who's amazing, and got to study a little bit about the history and the playing approaches. And so on the album there's parts where I'm playing oud more like an oud player would, like a traditional oud player, but also parts where I play the oud like a different kind of fretless guitar. And so it's a very interesting and hopefully thrilling thing on this album, which I really like a lot. And this oud solo here on this song is just one of my favorite parts. There's also a long outro fretless guitar solo, which is cool because it's one take, there's no editing, definitely no rhythmic alterations on the entire album. So there's just the recording, it's all the improvisation. Nothing has been edited to the grid or fixed in the mix. If I wasn't happy with it, I just re-recorded the entire thing in one take. So it's very spontaneous. It's not a lot of fixing going on. It's very human, and I really like how that fit into the sound of the album as a whole. I'm really happy with that guitar solo as well, because sometimes it just pushes against the beat. Sometimes it falls back. It's very it's raw, and that rawness is something that I haven't really explored on past records. So yeah, this is the time and place for it apparently, and so everything is now in the eye of the sun. I really like how that piece came about. Number 5 on disc 1 is Ashes Reality is a Low-Hanging Fruit. I still, to this day, have no idea what that means, but it's a pretty badass title if you ask me. And again, I know I'm saying this on almost every track, but this is one of my favorite pieces. It has amazing momentum, which I think is something that's really underrated in music, especially in instrumental music. Momentum, how the song builds up, how it gains traction and just takes you to different places and gets you to the good stuff in just the right speed, you know what I mean? So this song has amazing momentum. It's really, it's funky, it's cool, it has great riffs and great melodies and ideas, and it just takes you to a new place in just the right speed. There's also this oud. Sometimes I'm doubling the bass with the oud, the lower strings in the oud. There's also a cool thing going on here where I'm playing percussion on the oud, so I'm reversing the body of the instrument and drumming on it, recording myself, double tracking, trying out different rhythms and then speeding them up or slowing them down depending on what the part demanded. And so a lot of these percussion things that you hear in this track and in some other places on the album is actually me drumming on the body of the oud. There's also cool stuff going on in terms of expressing different emotions. More on that later. So that it's definitely not a sad album, definitely not a dark album, even though it has dark moments. So a lot of my guitar work sometimes is exploring different characters, if you will, you know, like more like happy characters, and, like wide-eyed, exploring the world kind of things, which is something I haven't done on definitely not tech death albums. Really, always really glad to put myself in different situations like that and try to evoke different emotions with the instrument. I really don't have too much to say about this track other than that. However, one of the thing that I can tell you is that this song, just as an example for how the whole thing here worked, came together really quickly from my end. I know that we've taken our sweet time with this album, but as far as recording my guitar parts, I made a little bit of a commitment and set a goal for myself that I wanted to be really effective and quick. And just to be perfectly honest, another reason is that projects like this, they don't pay. So you really have to be mindful of the fact that you can't, or at least I can't, spend months overthinking and obsessing about little details while I'm holding off on the paid work. I gotta pay my bills, I gotta feed my kids, all these life things, right? So in the past, on some albums that I've done, in hindsight, I've taken too much time and I've been too perfectionist about my own playing, and not on this one though, which doesn't mean that I'm not super happy with how it turned out, but just the goal was to be really effective and to work as quick as possible. So every song, pretty much every song, came together in one studio day, from hearing it to developing the parts to recording it, giving different options to the guys, to choosing what will stay and what will go, to making a couple of changes if necessary based on the feedback. Everything came together in roughly one studio day. Not on every song, but definitely on this one. And that's a good feeling, to be able to deliver this quickly and also not to overthink it, which can be a huge problem, because then you end up sometimes not seeing the forest for the trees. You're working on tiny little details and playing ideas, and you completely forget about what you were trying to say in the first place, or how your playing is supposed to fit in there. It's not about your playing all the time, just it's a collaborative effort. So yeah, that's a good feeling. Just saw my leg go one time past. Anyway, Ashes Reality is a really, really good track, in my opinion. Hope you like it as much as I do. Number 6 is one I just call Joker. And that's another example for all the things I talked about before. There's lots of oud, it's very spontaneous. It came together really quickly. There's a guitar solo, fretless guitar solo on it. Actually, come to think about this, there's really not much fretted guitar at all on this album. It's just one fretted guitar part in the next song coming up after this. Everything else is fretless. So oud and fretless guitar. Even if you hear chordal things, everything is all fretless. So Joker is interesting in that it exemplifies the method of working here. Because with Amogh Symphony, at least on this album, you don't get sheet music or you don't get theoretical explanations or wishes like, I want you to play melodic minor mode 4 for X amount of bars, like here. That's really not the case. What this is more working in as if you're working in a movie, on a movie script or based off a movie script. So you get the song or the song idea, and then Vishal will have an idea for a part representing a certain character or point in the story, and then you have to feel into that and provide the right kind of expression, emotion for that is hopefully right for that part. So Joker, I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's really a clownish song. So there's an element of tricksterish energy going on here. I hope the guitar solo reflects that. There's a technique that I've been working on in the solo, which hopefully comes across, where I will be playing melody lines with the left hand, and I will tap with the right hand, but not as in tapping different intervals, but I will tap really quickly the same note that I'm playing with the left hand, just a little bit higher, as in a higher microtone. And so I will rhythmically alternate between the melody note in the left hand and the microtone in the right hand, and just do these rhythmic flutters between the two hands, which is really, really hard to do, especially if you're going from one melody note to the next. But it's a very interesting technique that I've been spending some time with lately. I hope I get to explore that more in future projects. So if you're wondering how I create these sounds in the solo, that's why, or that's how. Apart from that, this is another album that has 0 effects on it, just a little bit of delay in the mix, but all the guitars are really, as I recorded them, no editing, no effects, no pedals, no nothing. Everything is played by hand. And talking a little bit about this method of cinematic working in music, that is something where, in hindsight, I'm really glad about how some parts of my career went, because I'm now able to do these things based on past experiences. Like, for example, this song and how we worked on that based on the script ideas and on the story. It just, for me, that was coming together effortlessly, because of the simple fact excuse me, that I spent a lot of time working like that in the past. I was a part of a phenomenal band called Excel many years ago, and that really pushed my own boundaries and changed my perception of how you work in a band and how you work on music. Because I was used at that time, when I joined Excel, I was used to learning the part, playing it more or less correctly, and that's it. Once you learn the riff, that's it, your job is done, and you just play it to the best of your abilities, hopefully always the same if you can. And so when I came in rehearsing with Excel, I would have learned these riffs, really complicated riffs, because his music is a combination of progressive metal and classical music from the Balkan area, so there's lots of odd times, lots of crazy unison runs between guitar and saxophone and violin and oboe. And yeah, so I would come in having learned these riffs, playing them hopefully correct as possible, and he would just look at me, and so Xel was a guy, so Alexander Davov, being the composer and oboe player in the band, and he would just look at me and he's like, yeah, not quite, you see, you have to play it as if you're a hungry bear coming out of the woods trying to hunt food for his children. And I would look at him like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Like, I want to have the drugs that he's having, and I just felt really uncomfortable with that method of working at first. And these were all, most of the people in the band were classically trained musicians, where you will be expected to come in having the ability to play the parts perfectly in rehearsal. And when rehearsal is not to get it together, but rehearsal is the moment where you work on the expression. How do you bring these parts to life, and how do you find different avenues of making the parts sound, so in the finer details. And that was all like completely new and really scary to me. It took me an awful lot of time to be able to deliver that sort of environment, but it was one of the most fruitful and formative experiences in my musical career in hindsight. And so now, going back to Amogh Symphony, that method of working in this very visual way, trying to get into characters with playing an instrument, that really just only works for me because of that experience I had with Xel. And I am, now that I do have that, I'm always really grateful for having the opportunity to work in this kind of way, because it can be very freeing and just it's a lot of fun. If you can do it, it's a lot of fun, and Joker is one of the best examples for that. Moving on to song number 7 of the first half of 4 is Farewell Father, which is a song that has 2 parts. The first one is really very tender, yearning ballad, where I play very sparingly, just a tiny bit of oud. And then the second half goes straight up Indian metal, and it has the only fretted guitar solo on the album. And I think for the shred heads, this is like the one moment on the album where I really let loose in terms of playing fast stuff. And honestly, I think, as a musician, you always think that your newest work is like the best work, and it just kind of comes with the job. And I really think that this is one of my best fretted guitar solos ever. At the very least, I think it's one of my strongest ones since Acrosis, the Obscura album that I did, because it's very melodic, but it's also really ferocious and has some really twisted ideas on the guitar. There's also going to be a playthrough video for that one that I haven't released, so look out for that one on this channel. And that's the only fretted guitar playing piece on the entire album, and I'm really happy about that, because when do you get the opportunity in metal music or prog music or whatever to play a fretless guitar so much and play oud? There's really not any band like Amogh Symphony on the face of the planet where you can actually do that, and you're encouraged to do it. Just get all the weirdest shit on it and make it work, and it coming together organically. So yeah, I just think that's the coolest thing. So the second half of the album opens with a song called Cat Scandinavia. No idea what the title means, and just really glad it's the opener, because it's super interesting and quirky. and it explores a set of influences that we all share in Amogh Symphony. Andre, Derek, Vishal and I, we have a lot of similar musical interests, but we don't necessarily have had the chance to explore in different projects, and especially not in Amogh Symphony together. So this is the moment where a certain set of influences really come to the forefront. You know, no hope, no stop sign, like no limitations. Meaning things like Avox Twin, Square Pusher, Amon Tobin, Venetian snares, you know, electronic sampling-based music, which we all, I guess, also grew up listening to besides the metal thing. And it also, well, first of all, it's built around vocal samples. 90%, oh, it's a loud one. So 90% of the track is built around us singing and sampling our voice and just manipulating our vocals in various ways and building the track around that. There's a little bit of oud that I'm playing later on, but definitely no guitar. And it also opens with me singing. So literally the first thing you hear in the track is me singing these harmony vocals full, like up front, which is something that gave me a lot of anxiety, and I kind of fought hard against having to sing on this album. But Vishal really encouraged me to do it, as all of the other guys are doing it as well. And I'm really glad he did. I just didn't have the, like by myself, or didn't really have the courage or the opportunity to really sing on an album and really think of myself as a vocalist. So yeah, the first thing you hear in the song is me singing these harmony vocals, which according to Vishal sound like Aaron Carter. I really don't know if that's true. I mean, I got a lot of love for the Backstreet Boys, but first of all, I'm way hotter than Aaron Carter. Second of all, it really doesn't sound like that at all. It's just, but it's a really cool thing to do, and I'm really glad I had the opportunity to sing on this album. I've always sung with my kids in teaching. I sing a lot, and I always did my own vocal demos if I'm working on a project. But I've never had the courage or just the the self-confidence to sing on an album in any kind of way. But yeah, now I do, and I'm really glad for the encouragement. I think it came together great, and I'll let you guys be the judge of if my voice is anything to listen to, anything to enjoy or not. So that's the first track, Cats, Can, and Navia. Right, now we have Birds. And Birds is, again, you're probably going to be tired already of me saying that, but Birds is one of my favorite pieces on the album. It's short, it's concise, it doesn't overstay its welcome, but it just manages to incorporate or encapsulate the entire spirit of the album in one instrumental song. And there's a super cool video that we have, a music video for that song. I'll let the car pass. The video was done by an Indian artist called Consumer, and it's just amazing. I'm going to link to it right now. And it's really psychedelic, really crazy, really unique, and we love it. I hope you're going to love it too if you haven't seen it. So Birds itself has all the different elements that we've already been talking about. It has oud, it has fretless guitar, and there's actually something here that I haven't talked about, which is when we do have like heavy distorted rhythm guitars left and right, it's usually Vishal playing a fretted instrument on one side and me playing the fretless guitar on the other side. And I don't even have any idea or reference point of how he's coming up with these sounds and noises that he's doing in his riffs. But I just try to transcribe that and get as close to that on a fretless guitar as possible using my own means. So it's very um, it's still tight, but it's very raw and spontaneous, and it's not made to be competing like in like a tech deaf environment where you have like every note nailed to the grid and everything has to be super controlled and tight. It's more loose, and that gives it a very interesting feel. I mean, I've done the tight on the grid controlled tech deaf thing so often. So it's like a breath of fresh air on this album, doing something to a different aesthetic. And it's still heavy as shit, I think. There's some unexpected, at least to me, like mid-90s Sepultura-isms also played on fretless guitar happening in this song and elsewhere, which I think, I don't know where that's coming from, but I'm really glad it's there. There's also a guitar solo, which is more on the screaming, aggressive side, using the EBow. And all of my guitar parts on the album were recorded, except for one song. All the guitar parts were recorded in my old home studio. One song, which is Enduring Freedom, it was recorded in my new studio where I'm right now, where I'm recording this, on the balcony. And it's very straightforward. Like I don't want to lie, but I think I used only one particular Kemper profile. So everything went into the Kemper. And I used only one profile on the entire album, and all the variations for the different parts that you hear there are all done in this one profile, and just it's in the fingers, in the tone, in the way I use the guitar. And so yeah, just going for it, trying to get something happening as quick as possible, like in the old days where you just had one amp and you just had to make it happen on that one piece of equipment, which really frees up creative capabilities. And yeah, I couldn't be happier how that turned out. Like barely any processing, definitely not really any editing, and just recording straight in, flying into the mix, and that's it. And as far as the oud goes, I think I recorded the oud with my KEL condenser microphone, just one mono microphone in the room, and that's it. Yeah, a little bit more post-production tricks going on there, but that's something that Vishal did, so it sounds great to me, so can't complain about that. So I hope you like birds, and I'm going to link to the video right now. Cool. Number 3 on the album, song number 3 on the second half of 4, our double album, is called Enduring Freedom Since 1947. That is the track where we have the amazing Sean Reinhardt as a guest drummer, who's played with Cynic and Death, Beyond Spoke, loads of other projects which we are a fan of. And I know him and Paul and Cynic have been supporters of Amogh Symphony in the past, so it's really cool to have him on here. He adds a lot of punch and oomph into the track, which really fits, because it's probably the most aggressive and chaotic song on the album. It's almost overwhelmingly so. There's like these synth and orchestra swells, like batches of really aggressive atonal raw sounds rising, heavy riffs, vocal things, just all around craziness. I wouldn't say it's my favorite of the album, but it definitely adds another dimension in terms of things going on the album. There's one really interesting thing here, is that there's a politician's speech in the first half of the song, which I got to learn and transcribe and double on the fretless guitar. So I try to imitate the rise and fall of the pitches of the speech, which wasn't easy to do. And that's a really cool thing, that I enjoy doing. One of the reasons being that it's kind of like a hidden tribute to Steve Vai, and because the first time I've ever heard anybody do that thing where somebody would take a guitar and imitate speech, human speech, in that sort of way was Steve Vai on David Lee Roth's classic Eat 'Em and Smile LP. And like on the first track, Yankee Rose, it starts with a conversation between David Lee Roth and Steve Vai's guitar, where he's really amazingly imitating the way that David Lee Roth talks, and they're like having this conversation. So that was the first time I ever heard or was being introduced to the idea that you can do that, and that a guitar can get close to a human voice like that. So this is like a tiny little moment, me paying tribute to that. Hope you check it out. Next one, actually I have to read it out here on my laptop. It's called Draining Colors from the Rainbow While Dancing Between Raindrops. Well, I think that the title says it all. It's one of the most chill songs on the album. I really like it a lot. It's more psychedelic, like early Pink Floyd. Has a very slower pace, some beautiful textures. Not much going on in terms of crazy guitar playing, but just a really well-crafted, hopefully nice piece of music. And then in the outro, something cool is happening, because there's this piece of fretless guitar playing where I'm playing the guitar as if the guitar is happy and smiling. And that may sound odd to some of you, but when you're working, especially like I have been working in metal for so long, that is an expression and a thing that you can't really explore so often. You don't get to do that on an Obscura album or a Nine album or these kind of things, because it's about expressing different emotions than that. Very, always very dark and cathartic and or sad and whatever, or aggressive. But like this kind of happy, bouncy, playful thing, that really didn't happen so often in the past, and I'm really glad I got to do it on this album quite a bit. And this is the part in the outro of Draining Colors where I really, got to bring that to the forefront. And I hope it comes across the way I'm playing the fretless guitar, that it's really, it's smiling at you, it's laughing, it's happy, and I hope that also translates to the listener. And yeah, it's just really fun to get into different characters and modes of expression as a player. It's kind of like as if you're an actor. There's these people, these actors, where they will do all sorts of things over their careers, but then they play this one character, and that ends up defining their entire artistic life, where it's them being hired to play variations on that same character over and over and over, and that can become a cage, that can become really restrictive, because how many times can you find new ways to play the same character? There's a limit to that, and it's always great to get out of that typecasting kind of thing, where you get to explore a totally different character and just have a ball trying to express something that you couldn't express on camera or on record before. So I get to do that here. Sixth song on the second half is Drone Bomb, the Bomb Maker's song. It's another left turn, so to speak, on the album. Really cool song, has a bit of a 70s vibe. Awesome vocals by Derek. Again, very story driven, and there's not, on this one there's not much guitar or oud from my end of things, because all of that was when I came into the band. Most of that song was already done, but there's a lengthy outro solo. Again, being an example of working in this kind of visual, cinematic, script-based thing, because there's story, a character, and I have to present, or I have to play a certain character and just amplify the emotion of things exploding and getting out of hand and at the end of the song. So I really hope that comes across. It's another one where I try to incorporate this technique that I talked about before. The switching between different microtones with two hands while simultaneously playing a melody line. And so, yeah, that's a cool thing. I really hope that comes across. Also using the Sustainiac pickup on my fretless 7-string from Soul Tour Guitars. The Drone Bomb song. Really not much to say from my end, but definitely an awesome song. Really glad it's on the album. And that brings us to the final song of the album, which is called Third Eye Awakening. I'm not going to talk too much about it. You can already hear it on YouTube. It's been released before the album release, and it's the other prog epic on the album, to me at least. It's a long song. It has a ton of different movements, takes you through different places musically and emotionally. It has the oud, it has fretless guitar, it has solos, it has wild stuff happening, it has odd times, it has crazy interactions between band members. It's really progressive in that way, and it takes you on a journey, and I hope you'll enjoy that journey. I think it's a fitting way to close the album with it. And yeah, that's it. I just really hope that people enjoy this album, that they will give it a chance, because it's new music. This is not something that is a variation on a concept or a kind of music that's been done over and over and over, and you just add your own tiny little flavor. This is really something new. This is something exciting to be a part of, something that's never been done before. And I'm just really excited to have it finally released, to get to share it with all of you. I would love to hear your comments about it. I would love from those of you who've heard it and bought it, what do you think of it? What's your favorite songs? What's your favorite Tom moments on it? I would be very interested in hearing about that. So like, subscribe, comment. If you want to hear more of these track-by-track videos, maybe for an album that I've done in the past, also comment on that. Do share on social media if you can. I mean, we are doing this independently. This album, there's no promo campaign or label behind it. It's just all about full creative control. So any kind of help on social media and grassroots promotion that we can get, we really appreciate that. And apart from that, the only thing left to say is thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you actually were able to hear what I say, despite the chirping birds and the cars and everything. But yeah, this has been a pleasure. This is Tom signing off. I really hope you enjoy. It's available from amoghsymphony.bandcamp.com and from all the other major streaming sites. So, really hope you like it. Bye bye.